You are tuning in to the Pop Culture Retrospective Podcast.
This show is dedicated to the memory of my big sister Rebecca, a fan of all things pop culture, particularly of the people, places, and things that defined the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. Welcome aboard this pop culture time machine. I'm Amy Lewis. This is episode number 118, 25 questions about retro video games, friendship, showbiz pizza, and more with Dan Lucen, co-founder of the Midwest Gaming Classic. If you have been a longtime listener of the show, then you may recall that one of my very first episodes focused on Nintendo. This groundbreaking home video game system played a significant role in sparking the decades-long love affair that countless children and adults have with arcades, video game consoles, online gaming, and more. I often find myself reminiscing about playing Nintendo with my sister. I believe her favorite game was The Legend of Zelda. And I have also introduced my kids to pinball and retro arcade games. I remember in an old home video filmed on Christmas, I screamed with delight when my grandmother, Obachan, that's how we refer to her as, she was born in Japan. She surprised me with a brand new Sega Genesis system. So when the opportunity arose to interview someone who has co-created one of the largest and most sentimental gatherings of game lovers of all kinds, I jumped at the chance. Further, once I learned he was from the Midwest, which I have often referred to as the Midbest, as I was born and raised in Illinois, I knew I needed to have this individual on the show. So, without further ado, I hope you enjoy my conversation with Dan Lucen, co-founder of the Midwest Gaming Classic. Before we start this episode, I have a few quick audio notes. First, I want to apologize for the sound of my voice in this episode. I was still recovering from a pretty bad virus when we recorded. Additionally, the audio quality dips for a few minutes toward the end of the episode. Thankfully, it doesn't last long, so I hope that you barely notice it. Sometimes, internet connections can be a bit unreliable, to say the least. Welcome back to the Pop Culture Retrospective Podcast. My name is Amy Lewis, your captain aboard this pop culture time machine. Welcome back to the show. And today I'm very grateful to be joined by a gentleman from the Midwest. I always joke on the show that Midwest is best, which is true because I'm a native Midwesterner. But today I am joined by Dan Lucen. I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly.
You are.
Okay, perfect. I butcher everybody's last name on the show.
Well, you didn't this time.
Okay, perfect. So Dan is one of the co-founders of the Midwest Gaming Classic trade show in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. This show features all types of games, including pinball, arcade video games, home consoles, computers, tabletop games, trading card games, air hockey, and a lot more, which is amazing and just fascinating. So Dan, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and you got a great setup going there. You have the Jurassic Park pinball game behind you. It's really serving the ambiance that we need for the show.
Yeah, pinball is something that I got into in the 90s. I was just a brief story. I was at at Summerfest actually, and they used to have arcade tents. So you would have arcade tents, and my parents were like, "Oh, we want to go see this band," and I was like, "I don't care. Can I stay in the arcade tent?" And they were like, "Okay, but we're not giving you any money." And I loved watching people play pinball, because I thought it was all luck. And I watched a guy play Jurassic Park pinball for like an hour straight. And he started talking to me. And he was like, if you get good, you can win free games. And I was like, wait, you can do what? And after that point, pinball was my game of choice because I was like, if I get good at this, I can win free games. And so Jurassic Park remains one of my favorite games. And it was a Jurassic Park that he was playing on.
Wow. Interesting coincidence. Yes, that is amazing. Well, it's all making sense now after I've done some research. So, so Dan, before we get into what I like to call 25 questions, can you tell the audience a little bit about who you are, where you grew up, and what you were like as a kid?
Sure. So, well, that's funny. To add in the what you were like as a kid part of it.
Yeah.
So my name is Dan Lucen. I'm from the Milwaukee area and have been my whole life. Grew up in West Dallas, currently a resident of Wauwatosa, which are both suburbs of Milwaukee. Um, I have been here my whole life. As a kid,
Hmm.
I was always interested in tech and stuff like that, and I was also always interested in theme parks, and so that was kind of my two go-to things. And at first, everybody thought that was really cool. And then later on, it was less cool. And so I kind of became like an outcast, but I was still very interested in it. And it kind of led to what Midwest Gaming Classic is because I used to go to the arcade. And what I always found was that when you walked up to a game in an arcade, you were instantly friends with anybody else that was playing. My favorite game was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I'd walk up and put my quarter in the
Classic.
Donatello slot because he's the best. And after, oh, good, good. I love it when there's
Agreed.
more Donatello people. And I honestly, I didn't really know Turtles until I started playing that game, and I figured that he had a longer reach with his weapons. So I was like, oh, it'll cost me less money to play this. Not true, by the way, but that's what started my love with him. And anyway, anybody else, race, gender, ethnicity didn't matter, could walk up and start playing, and we were instantly friends. And I could talk to them in a way that I wasn't talking to other people in. And so I developed this really good relationship with games and using it as a way to kind of introduce myself to people. And Midwest Gaming Classic came up because I had been really interested in a console called the Atari Jaguar, which like nobody really remembers, but was the last throw of Atari. And I had heard that it was going to be this amazing thing. I went to a mall actually in Ohio, saw them at KB Toys for $40 a piece and thought, why is this amazing thing only $40? Asked my parents if I could borrow money. They said, absolutely not. You have enough game systems. Went home and found a place online where I could buy them. And so me and three friends bought an Atari Jaguar and a bunch of games. And then because we found it online, we started talking with an online community about the Atari Jaguar. And what happened was that community decided, well, we want to get together in real life and talk about the Jaguar. And so there was a show that traveled every year. And so in 1999, we went to it in Rochester, Minnesota, and we were like, this is awesome. Let's host this in Milwaukee. And so we offered in 2001 to host it in Milwaukee, and people said, sure, partially because no one else offered to host it. And we hosted a really successful Jag Fest, as it was known as. We had over 100 people show up, including people that flew in from Japan. And it was just a really fun time. And as part of that, we had people come to us. And one guy in particular, Marty Goldberg, came to us and said, hey, I don't really have any Atari Jaguar stuff, but I'm an Atari historian. And I've got older Atari stuff. Could I share that with you guys so you guys could show me the Jaguar stuff? And we were like, of course.
Yeah.
And that ethos is still what runs the show. If you come to us and you say, hey, I've got this, we say, great, come and show it. This year, we're adding speed puzzling to the show. And that's because last year after the show, someone said, I do speed puzzling. Have you guys ever thought about doing that? And we said, no, but if you want to bring it in, let's do it. And so they're bringing in, I think, like 10 tables worth of speed puzzling this year. And the show has grown from 100 people in a basement to last year was 36,000 people and 350,000 square feet of the Baird Center.
Holy smokes. That story is just unbelievable. And I do remember Jaguar, and I remember the commercials for it too. And it did seem like it was going to be the biggest and greatest next thing. And then all of a sudden it wasn't. But it's how nice that you still embraced it and found a group of friends and a community that were all rallied around this system that not many people ended up having.
Yeah, what's unique about the online world for it was that we were finding the failures of it and exploring them. And at the time, companies were more than happy to be like, oh, yeah, you're interested in seeing the VR units that we had? Let me see if I can dig them out. We'll send them to you. And like literally they had developed 2 VR units that they used at a trade show in Chicago. And those VR units were so good that afterwards, everybody that covered them in like magazines and stuff said, oh, they hid an arcade unit behind the wall and it really wasn't a Jaguar. It was. And someone in the community asked this company, like, hey, do you have any record of this? And they literally shipped them the headsets. And so we had the headsets at our show. And there was all this just fascinating stuff where Atari was like sitting, they developed a online matchmaking system that you could call people and play games with. never came out, but they developed a whole bunch of the prototypes, enough that like a lot of us in the community had one. And like there was just these really fascinating things that you were finding. And like the biggest problem that the Jaguar had was that Sega did such a good job saying that 16 bits made their system twice as good as the Nintendo's 8 bits. But really, bits are not necessarily the biggest like showing of power. A lot of computer systems that we have now are 64 bits, not like 1028 bits or something. And that's because when you increase the processor and the RAM, that's what really matters. Well, Atari made a 64-bit console that could pass 64 bits of data, but there was no real time that it would ever do so. And then they said, this is going to be 4 times better.
Right.
And it couldn't have been. So that was the ending of it. But it made for such a fascinating discussion of like, ooh, what could they have done differently and stuff like that. And that's where we all came from. And we wanted to share our theories essentially with each other. And again, that's really what our show is that we have everything from huge companies to the smallest individuals that come. We call it more of a maker fair for gaming than anything else. I guess last kind of fun thing, a couple of years ago, we had the makers of WWE 2K24 there. Directly beside them, we had a 10-year-old kid presenting a game that he made. And so that's just like what we are. And both groups, by the way, were like, this is awesome, let's do it. And so it's a really unique show, and I'm glad to be doing it. It was not what I was expecting to do as a child. I was expecting to run my own theme park, which did not work out. But
it's a tough gig. It's a tough gig. Yeah. Oh, well, what an incredible story that you're able to kind of compress into a very short little explanation there, but that is just amazing. And I can certainly relate to the interest in retro video games and theme parks and all that stuff. I go way back with that kind of stuff. So, well, thank you for giving us kind of that introduction. And so what I'm going to do with Dan, which I've started doing with guests in the past, is asking kind of a collection of miscellaneous questions, both kind of about his topic or area of expertise, and then throwing in some trivia and things like that, just to sort of mix up the interview a little bit, so it's not sort of the standard questions. And we'll also kind of maybe throw in some bad Midwestern humor into it as well. So Dan, if you're ready, we could get started on some are my 25 questions with Dan Lucen.
Absolutely, I'm excited.
Okay, so some of these, one or two of these, you've kind of answered a little bit. So
Sorry.
why don't we start with this one? From what I understand, this humongous convention all started back in 2001, which you explained, which you orchestrated this gathering. And before the release of Jaguar, Atari was actually slated to release a console under what other name? And I can give you choices, or you may know it off the top of your head.
I know way too much about this, so it's the Panther.
That is correct.
The Panther was the 32-bit version. And they were prepping it for launch, and then they stopped its launch because the Jaguar's not production, but the design of it was close enough that they were like, this would be silly to release this right now, because we'll be able to release the Jaguar a year or two later. Yeah,
makes sense. And I think Jaguar just has a nicer ring to it than Panther. Maybe that could be part of it.
Yeah, they were doing a bunch of cat theme things. It was interesting. If you think about it, all the game companies were trying to do different themes for their console names for a little bit of time. People don't necessarily remember that Sega did the Saturn. I guess that they remember that part, but they also were talking about doing the Neptune and the Pluto. And Neptune was supposed to be, if I remember, a 32X with a Saturn or something like that. I'd have to look it up to remember what it is. Atari started using cats. So they had a handheld Atari Lynx, and then they were going to do the Panther, and then they were going to do the Jaguar in that order.
Yeah. That's so funny. Interesting how that all comes to fruition. That is very intriguing. And I love that kind of niche trivia is something that I'm a huge fan of. So I can relate to that. So I appreciate that you're very knowledgeable about this subject area, because I think it's fascinating.
If we move outside of Atari Jaguar, I'm less knowledgeable. Like I said, I know that there was a Sega Neptune. I'm not positive that I got that right. I'm actually thinking like, oh, somebody's going to be like, "Ooh, Dan got that one wrong," and I might have. But if it's Jaguar stuff, I generally know, because I really lived in that online world for a while. And one other thing that's just fun about that is that sometimes I see people that were part of that message board. It was just a message board back in the day, a text-based message board, nothing more. And like, I ran into a guy that was on that message board at Vintage Computer Festival Midwest, which is in Chicago.
Wow.
We talked for an hour, like we hadn't missed a beat. And
Wow.
like, I still know half a dozen people from those boards in real life because of that. And like, if someone emails me with a name, I instantly recognize them. And it's fascinating. It's a weird thing. It's something we don't get from the internet nowadays because we tend to, our tribes, if you will, get too spread out. But we had a very small, like, actual family almost. And so it's fascinating.
Yeah, that is. And do you remember like what your screen name was or whatever you called it for that?
I still use my screen name, which is Goat Dan. So the company that underwrites what we do, which is funny to say because it's also my company and it was tiny at the time and it's still not really big as Goat Store. We sell games of all types.
Oh,
and
cool.
Yeah, and so we started selling Atari 2600 through Dreamcast games, and so as I did that, it just became Goat Dan.
Wow. How funny that stays with you. At least that was like a usable name. My screen names usually had something pertaining to like Disney World or soccer, which is just not so much transferable as, 30 years later doesn't quite work, but that works.
Yeah. I mean, Disney World still exists and if anything is more popular today. So
true. That is true. Well, thank you for making me feel better because there you
go.
They're very narrow focus for my screen names back in the day. All right, let's see. We'll do a little more trivia kind of stuff here. Any longtime arcade or pinball fan will likely tell you that they are familiar with the infamous 1983 video game crash. And can you tell us a little bit about what you remember, which may have led to this ultimate demise of the video game crash of the early 1980s?
Yeah, well, there's two different factors with it. There's the public factor that we tend to cite now as the issue, and then there's the actual factors. The public factor that we tend to cite is that they made E.T. and Pac-Man and they were terrible games. And therefore, because they made terrible games, the entire industry crashed.
Yeah.
And there's like a grain of truth to that. Atari did, this is for the Atari 2600, Atari did massively over make those particular titles. If I'm not mistaken, they made more ET than they made consoles for the 2600 because they expected that they would sell that many more consoles so they could sell that many more games.
Right.
And like that's often cited as how Atari was just acting crazy. It's not the first time that they had done it though, and in the past it had paid off. The bigger issue was that by 1983, you had a lot of companies. Activision was the first one that left Atari and started making games for the 2600 that were we now call them unlicensed, but at the time there wasn't really a term for it because the 2600 didn't have any protection built in with it. The Nintendo system that came out later, the NES, had a chip on it that you had to handshake with, and Nintendo was able to keep that chip secret so that for the most part you didn't have people able to make additional software for it.
Yeah.
Atari didn't have that, and so when Activision left, they were able to start manufacturing their own games of an exceptional quality. And if anything, they were very worthwhile. However, what ended up happening was that meant that a million other companies came out and they started making games that were not of as high of a quality. And they started flooding the market with it. And so, especially because at the time, most games were purchased by a parent for their kids. It was younger kids that were generally playing games at the time. Parents were going out and seeing a game of, oh, here's this game for $10, instead of this Atari game for 50, let's buy this one for $10. It plays on the Atari. You'd bring it home and it wasn't good.
Yeah.
And the market got flooded with that. And then stores couldn't sell them. And then that was one big part of it. The other big part of it was that arcades had kind of the same thing happen. Is that there wasn't really ideas pushing forward games at that particular moment in time. And the arcade industry is cyclical. And what really it comes down to is that a lot of the times the people running arcades just go, ooh, the exact same thing that worked last time is what's going to work next time. And so they keep doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And what is actually always the thing that makes arcades popular is innovation. So like when Street Fighter 2 came out, it restarted arcades in a big way. The innovation was that it was a two-player head-to-head game where you defeated the other player. And there had been two-player games, but nothing quite like that. And it got a different culture, if you will, around games and had something that you couldn't do at home. Well, when those games went home later on, then that became less of a thing. At 83, home consoles had essentially equaled what arcades were doing for the most part, and it gave people less of a reason to go out at the same time that everywhere was going, oh, wait, we can fit a game here. Let's put one in. It will make so much money. And then you oversaturated the market.
Yeah. Well, I think that was a very good
explanation. That too long? I'm sorry.
No, I think that was
good.
No, I think that was was built on some awareness that people have, but like to a much greater point, and the whole you can replicate stuff at home. I mean, that makes a lot of sense, and the appeal of why to go and then why not to. I mean, that I think makes a lot of sense. That's really another era of video games that is just very fascinating too. How like it was a social thing, that it wasn't a social thing. Then it was a social thing. Now it's back to not being a social thing. It's a whole, like you said, it's a cycle. That's very intriguing of like why that happens.
Well, and I am lucky enough because of the show to talk with a lot of the people that were there for it and to hear from them a lot of these things. And so, like there are still ways that arcades really work. And my whole thing, by the way, with nostalgia is that we are often nostalgic not because things were necessarily so much better, but because the things that we did brought us together instead of tearing us apart. Whereas like so much of today's media environment and stuff like that is, ooh, let's put something in front of someone so that they fight with someone else. Back in the day, like I just described at the beginning, I would put my cord in the Donatello slot and I was instantly friends with the, person who was 5 years older than me, who I would never talk to ever. We were friends, and oh man, you get that pizza, you need the health. Oh, jump kick this guy, I've beat him before. Like that was what we did. And so what's interesting is that there are places now that are like working well as arcades and stuff like that. And the reason is that they're leaning into the, like, this is a social space. Yes. And that's, I think, the biggest thing. And the biggest good of games is that it gives us something of equal, like that we can equally trust and respect each other on instantly. Like if you and I sit down and play a pinball machine, by the middle of ball one, we are both like commenting, and I can be like, oh man, I missed that shot too. And we've now bonded over something that's a true experience that like, I don't know how else we get that in the same way anymore.
Yeah, that is very true. I think it's kind of the icebreaker factor, which kind of helps. There's sort of like a buffer if you don't know somebody, you're not just sort of like standing next to somebody and starting a conversation about this, can you believe it's snowing outside? Kind of those obligatory things. And then I think also it's the nostalgia for me, and I think for a lot of people, is because of the remembering a time when everybody was like fully present and participating and listening and active listening and not distracted by something else, is you're all sort of entertained by something, you're all having this shared experience at the same time, and nobody was distracted or trying to alter what it looked like by taking a photo or doing something that they normally wouldn't do. It was like a collective present experience. And I think that's why nostalgia often means so much to me, and why I reflect back on it, because like that is a time where we all shared this together and nobody was trying to film it or do anything to modify it. We were just present, enjoying living our lives and not knowing any different.
Right. Well, and there's some oddities from that. I know that you mentioned Disney World before. There's some fascinating things about how even in the 90s, there's, like I said, I used to be very into theme parks. I actually was a theme park executive for a period of time too. But even as recently as the 90s, there is stuff that was done at Disney parks where tens of millions of people went per year that nobody has any pictures or video of them doing. Right. And it's like, oh yeah, there was this show. Is there any record of it? No. And then like suddenly you'll get the one person that took a video of it, and it's fascinating. And so like it's a real interesting difference, and it also speaks a lot to how quickly we move as a human population, because it feels like that should have been the 1600s,
right,
compared to now, where everything has 5,000 pictures on a phone or whatever.
Exactly. That is so true. That is a discussion for a very lengthy show about why.
Yeah, I'll come back for that one.
Yeah, I was going to say, no, I think about that kind of stuff all the time. I'm serious. I can so relate to that sentiment big time. Let's see. So to go back to the Midwest Gaming Classic for a few here, how long ish. I mean, it's probably hard to put like a number on it, but how long does it take to set up for this like most recent incarnation, the really, humongous facility? Like, how long does it take to set all of that up? Because I'm seeing there's like, tube TVs covering, a million tables, and there's pinball games, and there's, standing arcade games. How long does it take to prep the space for this?
Yeah, I guess that there's two different answers to that. Both of them are relatively quick this time. The first one is
Okay.
we start planning for the following year more than a year in advance. So we've already got stuff planned for 2027 right now,
Wow.
just based on what we know is going on and stuff like that. We try to look at a multi-year horizon. And part of that is that as with the show as big as we are, we're 350,000 square feet. There's not many places that you can put a show that's that big. So like
Yeah.
our contract with the Baird Center reaches through 2029, which, by the way, is always funny to me because every so often we'll have someone come to us and be like, "Oh my God, you ran on the same date as this show," and usually the show that we ran on the same date as is like, 1/10 our size, and
Yeah.
and they're like, "You should have moved it," and I'm like, "We're booked through 2030 right now. I'm really sorry. Like, if I
Right.
could work around other people, I would." And
Sure.
when other shows contact us, I usually will tell them what I can about, like, hey, try to avoid these dates if you want to avoid our dates. But that's
Yeah.
just the reality of the scenario is like next year, for instance, we know that we're going to have more space.
Hmm.
And because we know that we're going to have more space, there's already been a lot of conversations about how we change layouts and stuff like that to fit that so that we can think about that even as we're there this year. As for the actual move in, we will start physically moving our stuff to the Baird Center on Wednesday, but we will not set anything up on Wednesday.
Mhm.
Thursday is the first day that we set stuff up. And so everything is set up within about a 36-hour period starting Thursday morning so that we can be open for Friday preview night at 6 p.m. There is roughly 1,200 ish people that help to set the show. Yeah, like I said, it's really a thing where when people come to us and they say, "Hey, have you done this?" We say to them, "Would you like to?" And then if they want to, we keep
Yeah.
them around. And like there's this magical thing with the show too, which is that we generally keep people around forever once they start working with the show,
Yeah.
unless if life stuff comes in the way. But like there was a year 2005 that we weren't able to run the show, and a bunch of people reached out and they said, "How can I help bring this back?" And we gave them a list of things, and every single person who reached out in 2005 still works with the show in some way now.
Wow, that is
And
unbelievable.
yeah, it's kind of a magical thing. And like we have a woman who works with us who came the first year because she was associated with some people that were doing signings, and she was kind of like, this show runs so differently than every other show that I've been to. And she's been with us ever since, and I've heard her refer to it to other people as, this is like the Disneyland of shows because it's so different than every other show. Like
Sure.
the way that a normal show operates is that they go, "Oh, we want to bring in console games, we'll bring in, this group that's going to bring in 50 consoles to set up. Oh, we want to bring in an arcade, we'll hire this group to bring in 2 trucks of arcade games to set up." At our
Yeah.
show, we go, "Oh, we want to bring in arcades, we're going to have 100 arcade collectors each bring in one game apiece, and they'll set up their own game and present their own game. And we've got these consoles, and we've got 50 people that like bring in their own collections to share." And
Wow.
it's so different and personal, and it
Yeah.
makes it a lot harder in many ways, but also a lot more interesting, I think, in the long run.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a much more meaningful experience than just some ABC company that schlepped the games out and they don't even know what the games are about or how they work. They just know how to move them into the facility, and that's about it.
Yeah, I always tell people, make sure to ask people, like, why did you bring this? Because every game that's at our show is someone's story. And it could be that, "Oh my God, I told you the story of Jurassic Park when we started and
Yeah.
why it's sitting behind me right now." And that's true. And if I bring Jurassic Park to the show, I'm going to be like, "Yes, this is why this was so important to me." Whereas we have games that we sometimes rent to other shows and stuff like that, and we've got a bunch of them, and I can tell you lots of stories about them, but I don't have as much of a personal connection
Mm.
as to what I would decide to bring if I'm only bringing one or two.
Yeah. That makes sense. Well, it sounds like those meaningful connections are like kind of at the root of this whole convention, and that's what it's. I'm stumbling over my words here. It's what separates it. It sounds like from kind of your big big box, no personality, just sort of going through the motions and doing it kind of event. And that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, my business partner says that we're more of a social trade show than a gaming one because we still have that heart of we're on a message board and we just want to see these people in real life. And like the Jaguars are our excuse to do it, if you know what I mean. Like that's really what those early shows were. And that's kind of what this still is that like we're going to have an excuse to get together and have a really good time with a bunch of friends. And like a whole bunch of us that do stuff at the show barely play any games at the show because we're too busy. But we have just as much fun because, oh my God, I'm going to get to see Mike on the dock and I'm going to get to see Tully. And man, I love Tully. And I haven't seen him in too long. And, oh, let me go see Chris over there. And let me go see, Dave Smith is going to be here. And like all these different things. And like, I can name literally hundreds of people that I'm going to be excited to see. And that's kind of the core of it that I do think sets us apart because we have all these, like I said, these individual groups that come in, and it also allows us to present really niche things that like at a giant trade show wouldn't make sense. We have a 16-player Faceball LAN. Baseball is a Game Boy game that you could link with up to 16 players. Yeah. And like nobody is going to go to a regular like huge convention and be like, oh my God, I've got to play this weird baseball thing on the Game Boy. And then at our show, they're like, oh, let us tell you the story about how nuts it is to put this together. And people are like, oh my God, let's hear about it. And so it's unique, and that's why we still do it. Yeah.
Well, I love stuff like that when you can find that there's a group of people that are just like you and are into the same stuff that you are, and they're very like passionate about it, for lack of a better term that isn't so overused. That must just be a very, I don't know what the right word is, like soul healing, or I don't know the word I'm looking for, but just like feels good, like deep down, just like to the core of like who you are as a person, to know that there's like other people out there like you that are your age, or, they're not 10 years old, like you can still be into that stuff. I think that's pretty powerful.
Yeah. Well, and it's been really interesting because speaking of that, when we started the show 25 years ago, a lot of people were like, oh, it's all the nerds that are going to be there. And it was just kind of like, okay, man, whatever. And then slowly through time, people realized like, oh no, all the normal people go there. Like the amount of like people trying to make nerd jokes or whatever has completely gone away. And like the other side of it is that gaming it's all different people and all different stripes and all different everything. You can game by doing something with rocks and sticks, and you can make up a game. And quite frankly, if you've done something with rocks and sticks and want to get involved with our show, you ask me and I'm going to say yes. At the same time, if you have, I know some people that have collections of some of the rarest pinball machines in the world, and they own 50 of them, and each game is worth an average of $20,000. That's not really the type of person that you expect is living in their parents' basement and, not socially, like too socially awkward to exist or whatever. And so it takes everybody. And it's a nice thing because it does give you this like great feeling with humanity, because you're like, oh man, look at all these different people from all different walks of life. And again, if we walk up to Jurassic Park and I'm playing with someone that is a millionaire, and I might be better than them at Jurassic Park. Their money doesn't matter. And so we don't need to talk about their money. And same thing on if someone is dirt poor, you can walk up to Jurassic Park and you can have a great game and talk to someone like you're not, or you're going through some things. You can talk to someone like you're not. And it just changes that perspective of everything. And so, like I said, I think it's oddly important. If I didn't, I've told people for years, could have made a lot more money managing McDonald's or something.
Sure.
But I actually feel like there's real social value in doing this.
Yeah. Well, I love that. And I think that's the unexpected thing that happened with me in podcasting, is all of a sudden you meet these people that you would never expect to meet ever. There would be like really no way to have that happen. But because you have this shared interest in something that, has a pretty profound impact on your life, you meet people from that walk of life. And that's a pretty beautiful thing. So that's super cool. When I was researching, there's like people have made a ton of YouTube videos exploring the convention, which are just unbelievable. Like every year, it's not even just like one video that like 5 people watched. It is like, it has a huge following. So as I was doing my research, I was wondering to myself, maybe this is kind of a corny question, but have there been any marriages or proposals or anything that have come about because of the convention?
Yeah, there's actually been both that I'm aware of. One of them is we were back at the Sheraton, and there was an arcade game that they had hidden a ring in for the person that they were proposing to.
Oh
And
my
so they
goodness.
played the game and then they opened it up and did it, and it was accepted. And then a few years ago, actually, at the Baird Center where we're at right now, we had a couple come to us and they said, "Hey, we met because of your show. It was really meaningful to us, and it would be amazing if we could get married at your show."
Oh my
And
gosh.
I was like, "Okay, like we can make that happen." And it's funny because I was like, "Do you want this to be something where we're like telling people, or do you want it on the down low?" And
Hmm,
they were like, "No,
good
you
question.
absolutely don't need to be telling anybody about it. It's fine. Like this is just where we feel that it's the most like representative of how we came together and like who we are as a couple."
Yeah.
And so we worked with one of our community zone rooms,
Hmm.
and at 8 o'clock at night, they shut down the room, flipped some decorations in it, and we had a wedding ceremony for about, I think there was about 25 people there.
Oh my God.
And yeah, and like the year that it happened, I didn't tell anybody about it because, like I
Yeah.
said, I'm not saying who it is, but it definitely
Sure. Right.
happened.
Yeah.
Because, and like again, it's unique because of that. There's a bunch of people that have come to us and said, "Oh, I met this person because of your show." We have last year there was a business that came to us and said that they wanted to donate a bunch of games to be given away for our VIG program, which is our very important gamer program. And
Hmm.
I was like, whoa, like this is a huge thing. And they were like, well, so here's the deal. A couple of years ago when I came here, I was trying to look for something to do with my life and a community to get into. I found out that people were still programming. I didn't know much about it, so I researched it. I came back the year later and I talked to some people. Those people are now my best friends, and that's who I'm in business with. And
Oh my
so I
gosh.
want
Oh,
I want to give back. And it's just like this is
that's so
again,
cool.
it's kind of the amazing thing that we do. So
Yeah. Wow. How awesome. This is like, I mean, the layers of why it's such a big deal is pretty far reaching. So that's amazing.
yeah.
I love stories like that. Um, so I've got a couple of other questions to throw in. Maybe not along the lines of getting married at a video
All
game
right.
convention, but that's pretty. But that is, I love that. That is
Yeah.
amazing that they did that. That is so cool. Let's see. What are some of the most requested games, would you say, that people want to play, or they're like gunning and really hoping are going to be available to try out or to revisit at the convention?
So that's a great question. What's fascinating about our show is that for the most part, like I was kind of describing before, is that people come less for the games themselves and more for the discovery of
Hmm.
what's around the games. And so like a lot of people, I feel like the answer is Mario or Sonic or something like that because like, oh yeah, those are the big most famous things. But for
Sure.
us, people recognize more and are more excited about the actual exhibits, if you will. So, oh, I want to go
Hmm.
to the museum and see what they put up this year because again, we rotate the games that we're putting up, and sometimes we put in the really popular games, and sometimes we put in the weird games.
Yeah.
And like if we put in a weird game, it's in there because we want people to check it out and have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
And we've done a pretty good job of explaining to our audience that that's what our show's about is that, like, if you're going just because, like, I must play Time Crisis, I'm going to go there and I want to play Time Crisis. If there's no Time Crisis, I'm not going to be happy.
Yeah.
If that's your thinking, I will personally be like, let me try to find a Time Crisis for you, but it will not be at my show. I'll tell you what other place to go to find that.
Sure.
At my show, you come in and you go, let's see what people are passionate about. And so it's that the guys, there's a room called G2B, which stands for Guys, Games, and Beer, which does a podcast, and they always bring in the wackiest stuff.
Mhm.
So one of the things that they've done is that they have a Steel Battalion land. And if you know Steel Battalion, it was a game for the original Xbox with a controller that had something like 145 buttons on it, and you're
Oh my
controlling a
God,
mech.
that's wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. And they set up 8 of them together linked, and then people play it and they teach you how to play it. And so like people love that room because they're always doing different weird things in there.
Yeah.
And there's just so much different stuff like that it's not the particular things, it's the overall thing. Having said
Yeah.
that, people always like to see whatever the newest pinball machines are. And
Hmm.
we have a lot of the pinball companies come and bring a lot of their new releases to the show. I believe that Stern Pinball is bringing 15 Pokemon pinballs to the show this year.
Oh, wow. That
Um,
will be a hit.
yeah,
Wow.
and that just came out like a couple weeks ago. So it will be one of the largest gatherings of Pokemon pinball, if you will, ever.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
I know that Spooky Pinball, which is a company that started because of our show, is bringing
Oh,
12 Beetlejuice pinball machines to the show floor for people to check out.
wow.
Um, and yeah, it's people love that aspect of it and seeing the new games. One of our
Sure.
goals, honestly, when we started it was I love pinball and I
Hmm.
was finding less and less places to play pinball. And so I
Yeah.
was like, I want to feature pinball so people remember to go out and play.
Yeah.
And pinball is actually in a much healthier place today than it has been.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying that that was me, but I'm really glad that it's around. And so that is something that people are always very excited to see.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think out here, I'm originally from the Midwest, but I've lived on the East Coast for a long time. And I feel like now there is, especially like in Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, it feels like there's this resurgence and interest in pinball specifically. And there's a lot of breweries now that have a ton of pinball games to play. And so it kind of is like nice for the kids and it's nice for the adults. And I feel good like sending my kids off with quarters knowing they're not playing some like really graphic, awful thing that they don't need to, witness because they don't understand it. It's like to have them go play that and then I can play with them too is
Yep.
just like the gift that keeps on giving, really, in my book. So
Yeah, it's an incredibly social experience because there are, I don't have them on this game right now, but you can put cup holders on the front of your game.
oh
And
nice.
so if you are at a brewery, you can have one person play, the other person put their drink down, and you can
Yeah.
keep talking. You can keep having a conversation around the game. Whereas a lot of the old school arcade games, they literally built walls on the side that you'd put your head into. So it was like
Yeah.
you literally left the room.
Yeah.
Pinball is extraordinarily social like that.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I love it. That is a genius idea because craft breweries are I know they're a thing certainly in Wisconsin, but definitely on the East Coast too. That's pretty genius. Let's see. A couple other like miscellaneous trivia questions.
Sure.
Um, which well-known electronics company, which is still in business today, is responsible for the creation of the lesser known but first commercial home video game console called the Odyssey?
Magnavox
That is correct. Nicely done. Do you know
was
anything about that system?
Ralph Baer was
Hmm.
the creator of it, who I forget his exact role, but he created it and he sold it to Magnavox. One of the issues with it was that people thought that it was only good for Magnavox TVs.
Oh.
And so it didn't really sell very well. It wasn't until
Mhm.
the Atari came up that we
Yep.
did that. We actually have a replica of his original prototype that one of the guys in our museum brings, so you can check that out. And Ralph has unfortunately passed away, but he actually zoomed in. Well, it wasn't Zoom at the time, but essentially he zoomed into our show
Yeah.
once or
Yep.
twice before he passed away.
Wow, that is incredible. And
Yeah.
and to people listening, like I did not run these questions by Dan at all. He knew that was gonna be like some random questions, but I gave him no hint whatsoever as to what this was gonna be about. So the fact that you not only knew Magnavox, but like the details in addition is pretty telling. So it makes a lot of
I
sense that you're in charge of this incredible
I feel
convention.
really lucky that you have asked questions that are literally like, oh yeah, I set up the thing with Ralph Baer back in the day, so I know exactly what's going on here.
Yeah,
So yeah,
that's that is incredible. Now, this is a very important question that if you don't know, I think people will throw things at their phones. Wisconsin is commonly known as the cheese state, which I'm sure you've heard your whole life, and I'm sure you're tired of hearing. And fans, often at Packers games, can be seen wearing said cheesehead hats. Do you know the origin of the cheesehead legend?
so I am not. Although Amon Green comes to our show and is a huge gaming fan, who was the Packers running back for many years. I actually need to call him after this interview because I have not gotten back to him quickly enough. I am not a huge fan of football. Basketball is my sport, so I can
Sure.
tell you all about which basketball players love games, but I am unfortunately not aware.
Okay, well, I think you're gonna have to turn in your Wisconsin driver's license, but
I'm lactose intolerant.
yeah. Oh, okay. Well, see, okay,
Yep.
okay, you got to pass that. And I find that a lot of stuff that is like kind of corny about various states is stuff that people who like actually live there aren't aware of or don't pay much attention to. It's more like a tourist thing. So, just like I never ate deep dish pizza ever when I was growing up near Chicago ever, and now that haven't lived there in so long, I want to have deep dish pizza, and everybody's like, "What is the big deal?" Like, I don't even care about deep dish. I'm like, "Oh my God, it's delicious," but I don't live there. So, anyways, back to Wisconsin. So allegedly, a fan at a Brewers game, not Packers, wore a homemade cheesehead hat by burning holes into a couch cushion and painting it yellow.
Okay. I mean, that checks
Fun
out.
fact. Yeah.
I know that the Brewers have had some different interesting things. I forget there was a big weird hat celebration that they had a couple of years ago where they were doing stuff and the stadium was selling whatever it was. I forget what it is, so now I sound just as incompetent about that. But
Okay.
but yeah.
It's it's interesting what people like know places for, but it's really not that big of a factor in like the people who actually like live there, like their life. It doesn't like impact them all. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
Let's see. According to a 2024 report, approximately how many gamers are there in the United States alone? Is it A, 50 million, B, 100 million, C, 150 million, or D, 200 million? And that was a mouthful. So if I need to repeat any of those, let me know. But
So my guess would always be the highest number on that, which was 200 million. So D. But I would also say that likely that is an undercount because people don't consider like, oh, if I play shoots and ladders with my kids, is that really a game? Oh, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I feel like gaming is something that everybody does. It's just that people don't necessarily identify themselves as doing it the same way.
So you have a correct answer and some solid information to back up your answer. So I concur. I think you're absolutely right in that. Or if they play a game like once a week or something, they may not, view themselves that way. But that's a very valid point.
Right. I mean, just as a quick thing with that is I have two cats.
Yeah.
And every so often there's one that's dominant does not seem to be dominant until he just decides that he is. And so the one that's not dominant will sometimes like wrestle at him and stuff like that. And the other one will kind of put up with it and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that anybody would look at that and be like, oh, you have gamers for cats, but they're playing a game. They're not trying to murder each other.
Right.
They are not like the one that is not dominant is not really trying to assert dominance because the one that is dominant, unless if he gets mad, when he gets mad, and the game is over. But like until that point, they're playing. And again, that's I feel like that's something that just through evolution we do. It's just that we often don't credit ourselves with that because for the longest time, gaming was seen as something that only kids do. And like, oh, adults would never game. But like realistically, even if you're standing somewhere and you're throwing your garbage into a garbage can and it's 3 feet away, you're playing a little game.
Yeah, that's very true. This is like philosophy, video games. I mean, all rolled into one. I try. Yeah, I love it. I love it. I think that is a really, really valid point. And I think we also adults, and this is like a whole other conversation. I think adults are very hard on ourselves too for like playing something or being viewed a certain way, like, that we're too old or we shouldn't be doing that. We should be doing something more quote unquote productive. So that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, I have always been a fan of theme parks, and it's fascinating to me because I take myself to the local Six Flags park 5 or 6 times a year, and I get a season pass, and it changes the relationship with the park because if you go and you spend an hour or two and you go on 1 or 2 rides, you don't feel like oh God, I wasted my time, and so you can just kind of take it slow and go through it.
Right.
And there's so many other people that I talk with that are less busy than I am, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I haven't been there in 7 years. That sounds so fun, but like, can you really do that as an adult?" And it's kind of like, why not?
Yeah.
And so I think that you're exactly right that a lot of the times as adults you feel like, oh wait, we need to not do that. And then if you just embrace like, hey man, I'm having fun and like it's not gonna hurt anybody or anything, as long as
Right.
that's going on, why
Right.
not embrace it?
Yeah. Yeah. I so agree. I so agree with that. That's the conversation I have with people when they see my dinosaur lunchbox, but we'll save that for another time. All right, here's a hypothetical question for you.
Okay.
An alien, yeah, an alien life form visits the United States and requests to play 5 video games, or I mean 3 to 5. It doesn't have to be five, but play 5 video games that span various years, genres, and systems to gain a well-rounded understanding of what video game playing is like. You want to provide them with a thoughtful selection. What 5 games would you suggest to give them a comprehensive overview of the video gaming experience?
Okay. Obviously, these are off the top of my head. So when
Yeah,
I say these,
don't think too
uh,
hard about it.
I will reserve the right to later on, an hour or two from now, go, oh, I should have thought of this instead. Uh,
Sure.
my first thing that I would do is that I would pick something from the arcade in the 80s, that or early 80s, late 70s, that would be an epitome of that period of time. I'd probably
Mm,
shy away from Space Invaders because this is an alien after all that we're talking about. So I would
true.
probably either go with I I feel like Qbert might be my choice there
Hmm.
because it's not it's a little bit different than some of the earlier games. I'm avoiding Space Invaders because of the whole alien thing, but it
Right.
gives them like hey, this was the single player type thing. I would pick something like probably I would guess Mario 3
Mm,
as my next thing
good one.
because it was the epitome, in my feeling, of an 8-bit platformer, and that was so important to that period of time.
Hmm.
I would pick a role playing game, and the one that comes to the top of my mind is Earthbound because it's one
Hmm.
of my favorite games ever. And Earthbound, it gives you the how you can work a human story into a game, even a rudimentary game
Hmm.
that can be extraordinarily powerful. If you've never played it, I played it first when I was a kid, and I've played it like every 5 or so years since. And every time that I play it, it takes on new meaning, and it's like shocking how meaningful it is to that moment in life. And so,
Hmm.
having that experience as a narrative is, I think, something that a lot of people that don't consider themselves gamers
Yeah,
um, don't recognize how powerful that can be when you can have an interactive narrative.
sure.
Um, I'd have to pick, I'm up to three. I'd
Yep.
have to pick something in the way of a three-dimensional storytelling game. Um, I would probably pick either one of the Metal Gear Solid games or Uncharted.
Hmm.
Although they're doing the same type of thing with the story, but they're showing more of like what games have become in the way of a 3D environment and stuff like that. Actually, no, I would pick the God of War from 2018 because
Okay.
that shows the extension of everything. And the early God of War games were kind of awkward to go back to because they are so like they're a little they're uncomfortable in some of the ways that they present their themes and stuff like that. The one in 2018 basically presented it as like, oh, this is why he did all that bad stuff, and that we were okay with that, and now we're not okay with that. And
Yeah.
it was a story of a father and a son that was very powerful because of that. And then the last thing is that I would pick a pinball machine because I've always
Sure.
thought that if aliens come to Earth, the two things that they will not really be able to understand is pinball and roller coasters, because
Hmm.
both of those are things that I feel like are very human. And that if
Hmm.
you try to explain it to someone that has no concept, it makes no sense. There's a ball rolling around and you can barely control it, but you can
Right.
control it a little bit, and it hits things that give you points. And there are tons of them, but why? Like, okay, and so I'd probably pick a more modern Stern pinball machine to be representative of what pinball has become. So let's go with Pokemon pinball since it's coming to the show.
Nice.
Um, and so that would be how I'd round it out. In I'll call it electronic games.
Yeah. Love it. Another like put you on the spot, but very thoughtful answer, and I appreciate that.
I
I'm
try.
learning a lot, actually. I'm learning a lot. All right, we'll do a couple more questions here. let's see. Oh yeah. So you've mentioned this a bit already, and I read about it on the website and the sort of 25 years at a glance information. Can you tell us a little bit more about the DIY and homebrew games at MGC? What exactly are these? What does it mean, and how does it work for maybe like us
Yeah.
non detail oriented knows the ins and outs of all video game stuff? Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. So my guess is that what you were seeing is probably the like homebrew pinball is what they
Hmm.
call it. And we also have what we call indie arcades. And that's literally people that are like, oh, I have an idea for a pinball machine and I want to see if I can make my own pinball machine. And they get parts for it and they start programming it. And in the last 10 years, especially, there's been a lot of tools that people have developed where you can put a computer in it that is set up to control switches and stuff. And then you can control that in certain ways. And so they've created their own games and they put them out. And it's been amazing because in some cases, there are people that have made their own pinball machine, brought it to a show like ours, and then Stern Pinball comes to them and goes, "This is amazing. Would you like to design for us?" And I know that Stern has picked up at least one designer that way. I don't know about the other pinball companies, but
Wow.
Stern in particular has done that. And yeah, and indie arcade games, the arcade industry is a really fascinating thing because, in short, buying a new game usually costs minimal $5,000. And
Hmm.
so if you're making that back, and a lot of people, they see an arcade game and they're like, I should pay a quarter for that. And maybe I'll pay 50 cents for that. But like
Sure.
it's hard to earn $5,000 back 50 cents at a time, especially because most of the time they are additions to the business that are not the main driver of the business. And
Yeah.
so people are deciding like, oh, am I going to go play that game or not? Whereas it's not like the 80s where it was like, oh, I'm going there to play that game.
Sure.
Um, and so they can bring in their own ideas and stuff like that and put them out. And we've had larger companies will then sometimes pick them up and actually produce them. There's a game called Perfect Pour that is a game where you have different like beer taps that someone made, and you have to tap the beer at the right size. So like as you do it, there'll be different
Yeah.
cups that go down, and you have to fill the cup to the right point,
Oh my
so you don't
goodness.
spill and you're not
Hmm.
under making the person mad. And I know that a company picked them up for a certain production run, and they're bringing a certain new version of that that's themed to a brand that's recognizable.
Sure.
And so, like, it's an interesting starting thing like that. Beyond
Yeah,
that, we
that's
have a whole,
genius.
yeah, it absolutely is. Beyond that, we have a whole area that we call Future Classics, where we say, "Are you developing a game? Come show it." And there's developers of all sizes. Like I said, we had someone that worked on WWE 2K24. They weren't the main developer, but they were like a support developer, and
Yeah.
they came to show that game. We also have that's where we had the 10-year-old kid presenting his dice game. We have students. We have all these different groups that come in, and we call that the Future Classics area because those are the games that you might play in the future.
Wow. This is like so far beyond what I think anybody would be expecting would be there. I mean, that's amazing. And I mean, my kids would be all over that. I mean, that is what a great way to hits on everything, hands-on experience, buy-in because you're creating your own thing. I mean, that is just fantastic. I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah, I went to a different event in Chicago a couple weeks ago, and it's bigger than what we are, but it's
Mhm.
basically just a vendor hall,
Mm.
and they have just a little bit of stuff to do. And I'm always fascinated by shows like that because I went to that one. There's a long story as to why I went there, but it wasn't exactly a choice. I ended up there to do some other things, and
Sure.
I just happened to be there at the time. And I was thinking about it of like, this just like I'm glad that people love this, but if I wasn't having a ton of money to spend on a ton of stuff, I don't know why I would be here. Whereas at
Mhm.
our show, if you buy a Sunday ticket for $30, you can play the entire day from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. without going in the vendor hall, and you can have a great experience without spending another dime. And I definitely felt at this other show like, well, I'm not really buying anything. And so there's like 40 games here total that I could play if I wait in line for them, but I don't know how that works and I don't really want to do that. So I guess I'll just wander around until it closes and then do what I need to do. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that is such a great point. And I've been to a couple of conventions, not on like video games specifically, but the focus of it is so much on either vending, on going to vendors, or like getting like autographs and stuff like that, which or like photos, which is like I don't really want to spend half my day waiting in line to have a photograph with somebody that like who am I going to give it to? Like, does my mom want a
Yeah,
picture of her middle-aged daughter with like Tori spelling? I mean, no, so it's like that. What is kind of the appeal? Maybe the first time is kind of like interesting, but after that it's like if that's just kind of if there isn't a lot of kind of human interaction and hands-on activities to do, it's kind of like, well, I kind of like you said, it's like I can't really justify this cost anymore because it's not really getting a lot out of it. The premise is good, but the outcome is like not that helpful. So um
yeah,
I could see
yeah.
why yours has gotten the backing and the support and the return people so many years. It makes complete sense.
Yeah, and we have guests like that too. But
Sure.
the thing that we do with them is that they'll sign for like 2 hours,
Hmm.
and then we give them the rest of the time to go explore the show
Yeah.
and to be creative. And so we end up having guests that do things that are wildly different than what they would do at regular shows. One of our guests, Christopher Sean, who's come to our show for like 5 different years, the biggest thing that he's known for is that he was the voice of Ultraman and Ultraman Rising for Netflix.
Hmm.
Um, and he, the first year, like I had so many people email me afterwards to be like, "Oh my god, I met this really awesome guy." At the time, he hadn't done Ultraman. He was on like Hawaii Five O, and he was the voice of Kaz in Star Wars Resistance. They were
Sure.
they were like, "Oh my god, I met this really cool guy." He asked if he could play this game with me, and then we played. And I said, "Oh, what do you do?" And he was like, "Oh, I'm an actor." And what? And they were, "Yeah, I'm in Hollywood." And they're like, "Oh my god!" And
Yeah.
like he's maintained touch with some of these people too. And like a lot of the times that we get people like this that come in, they're specifically looking for the type of experience where they can also walk around and enjoy the show
Right.
in ways that you don't necessarily get to do in regular shows. And
Right.
so we
That's
we had
genius.
the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase one year handing out drink tickets at our after party, that for people and stuff like that. So like it's just we try to work stuff like that in a much more unique way.
Yeah, and that how much more of a memorable interaction is that too than just sort of like the standard. And you can just, it sounds like you can do that because there are people like that's their thing that that's the kind of stuff they want to do, and that's great. But how wonderful that people can have these like really unique interactions with somebody, and there wasn't like a table in between them and
Right.
a ring light and like it was a more personal experience. I mean, that is just another more meaningful way to do things. So that's, I mean, a great
Right.
idea.
Well, and then it also gives you more meaning when you have something afterwards. I
True.
across the room, you can't see it from here, is Ghostbusters Pinball, and an interesting brief story about that is it's okay, right? I'm not derailing
Oh, no,
things.
you're good. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, go for it.
The When Ghostbusters came out, people at Stern Pinball had known that I'm a huge Ghostbusters fan. I have been kind of my whole life. I collected the toys and stuff like that, and
Same.
so they were like, "Oh, we're coming out with Ghostbusters Pinball. The first show we're going to have it as your show. We're going to get you so that you can buy one of the games that's at your show. You're going to be the first one that gets to get one." And I was like, "Okay, I'm buying a house. I can't afford a pinball machine." And they were like,
Yeah.
"It'll be fine. We're going to get you one that you can buy." And I'm like, "I don't know what you're missing here, but like, we're not going to do that." So anyway,
Yeah.
game comes out, and they were like, "Oh, we're really sorry. We're not going to let you get one this year because they're just prototypes." And I'm like, "Good. I can't afford one." But they were
Yeah.
like, "But here's Ernie Hudson's contact information. I think that he'd like to come to the show." And I was like, "What?" And they were like, "Yeah." And so in 2019, because it took us a few years to sync up the schedules, Ernie Hudson came to the show.
Wow.
And I have that pinball machine now. And I don't remember when I got the back glass signed by him. I legitimately wonder if someone on my team did it for me. But like, I met him and was like walking around with him. And like, it's funny because when you're in the role that I'm in, it's like little Dan thinks Big Dan has one heck of a cool job.
Right.
And so, but like, it's my job. Like, I'm not going to be sitting there going like, "Oh my God, do you know who you are?" Because like,
Right.
he's a person who puts on his pants the same way I do. Like,
Right.
yeah, that's who he is. Um, but so we're just hanging out and walking through the show and talking as friends. And what's crazy is that I still text him every once in a while, and he texts
Wow.
me back. And So
What?
that signature means something really cool to me because like I didn't know how like that would go, and it was the start of something that there's all these different factors with exactly how it turned out. And like again, you can
Yeah.
have that experience then at the show of like you absolutely could have just randomly ran into Ernie Hudson at our show as he walked around in 2019, and
Yeah.
so then you go, oh, I do want to get something signed by him because I want to remember this moment in a way that would
Yeah.
be different,
Right.
and I can go up and like it's a way that you can say thank you, and you have the money part of it gives you that reason to interact in a way
Mm.
that makes certain things more comfortable because I also
Right.
know as someone that deals with a lot of people like this that if I'm showing up somewhere, I was in California recently and Christopher Sean, who I mentioned is a good friend, and I was still a little bit like I don't know if I should bother him, even though I'm going to be basically in his backyard. And I finally
Right.
texted him, and he was like, "Oh my god, do you need a ride? Like, let's absolutely do a dinner. Like, you
Yeah.
have to see me when I'm here." And like, I still felt a little bit like I don't want to impose, and
Right.
so that signature thing can give people that element of like, "Ooh, I want to meet this person without imposing and feeling bad to
Right.
them," and that's
Yeah.
important. But
Sure.
the flip side of it is that I think that the real key to it is getting the reality that our show also injects to it that makes it even more special.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you kind of get like the best of both worlds in that setup. So
Yeah.
that yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um, but yeah, and despite the success of this, it sounds like it hasn't gone to your head. So you still um, not trying to trounce on any celebrities time. So it's good that you're still staying true to your your Wisconsin roots. So that's a good thing. Stay humble. It's a good way to be. But what incredible experiences you've had. That's so awesome.
Part of the
Yeah.
reason that this hasn't gone to my head is that in 2005, like I told you, we tried shutting down the show and it was
Yeah.
too much for it. And we had all these other people come and say, no, this is too important. We need to do this. And so I am extraordinarily aware that if it was up to me, the show would not exist. It is up to everybody else
Hmm.
that the show exists. And so when it
Wow.
comes to ego, the show isn't me. I tried shutting it down because of people like you that are willing to share the word that it exists. If there's no one coming and there's nothing, I will not be setting up likely any of my games. I'm not hosting anything of my own at the show. I'll be helping others do that. There, literally, no one is doing me. So therefore,
Wow.
I am the least like person there. Everybody else is honestly to the success of the show more important than me. And don't get me wrong, I do understand that without the
Yeah.
organization behind the scenes, that it won't work. But
Sure.
ultimately, there's not an ego of like, well, clearly the show is awesome because of me. No, the show is awesome because Stern Pinball is going to bring a bunch of stuff, and the museum guys are going to bring a bunch of stuff, and there's going to be a 45,000 square feet of tabletop games that people are going to bring. None of those are going to be me that brings them directly. I might say yes to the tabletop people and give them a space, and yes to Stern Pinball and give them a space, but that's not me bringing them.
Sure. Yeah. Well, makes sense. Makes sense. So we have just a few more minutes left here. So I'm just going to ask you a few more questions about the Midwest Gaming Classic, and then I usually like to finish up any interviews I have with some nostalgia rapid fire questions, kind of
Sure.
unrelated to kind of the topic at hand, but just sort of like thinking back to childhood and adolescence and stuff. So we'll just do a few more here about the MGC. Besides the main event, what are some of your sort of like must-dos in the Milwaukee area near the convention? So maybe like after hours,
Sure.
the gaming stuff has come to an end for the day. What are a couple of things that you think people should really go check out when they're in Milwaukee?
As a show promoter, I feel like I have to say after hours to go to the official after party for the Midwest Gaming Classic, which is on Saturday night.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
However, I always also tell people the kitty corner from the Bear Center is their market hall, which is
Mhm.
like essentially a bunch of food trucks that operate indoors. And
Cool.
so it's like 15 different independent groups, and they have all of this space set up, and you can go over there and whatever type of food you're interested in, they have it. And usually they have one of the best places in town for it. So that's a huge suggestion. If you're in town longer, I'd suggest going to the museum, which is only a couple blocks away. It's going to be changed and moved soon. And the old school museum is just very unique. And I think that it's going to lose a lot of its uniqueness when it moves. So there's a Streets of Old Milwaukee area that's like old timey, like almost Disney Main Street type thing. There's a old school dinosaur thing, and they've already said those will not be moved in the same way. So I would prioritize going to that. The art museum on the lakefront is not too far away and has a Calatrava extension on it that it kind of looks like a bird that goes up and down throughout the day a couple times. That's pretty neat to see. And then if you are into baseball at all, the Brewers play not too far away from where we are. And so I'd suggest that. And if you really like baseball, there's a brewery not too far from called Broken Bat Brewery that has an indoor wiffle ball field. And they also have some of our pinball and arcade games there. So you can stop by and play our pinball arcade games, get a brew, and then go play wiffle ball.
Oh, nice. Well, that sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, one of my favorite things that I've done recently in Milwaukee, so I have a very good friend of mine lives in Milwaukee, and several of my family members live in the greater Milwaukee area and have for years. So I get there periodically. And one spot I went to maybe last summer, I went there with my mom, is the Bobblehead Hall of Fame. Is like less than a mile from the center where your event is at. And I was like, blown away by that. I had no idea what to expect. It was the most random thing we decided to do. I think my mom was like, why are we doing this? Like, where did you even find out about it? And we like fell in love with it. Now we want to buy like bobblehead everything. So
I have not yet been there myself. However, for Christmas this year, I received the Chuck E. Cheese Make Believe band as bobbleheads, which was an exclusive that they made.
Rocket Fire Explosion?
No, not Rocket Fire Explosion. This was the Chuck E. Cheese's Make Believe band. Chuck E. Cheese.
Yes.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
If you're into Rocket Fire Explosion, we should have a different conversation in the future because we're working on something that I don't think is going to make it for this year, but maybe.
Oh my God.
We'll scratch the Rocket Fire urge.
Wow. Okay. Well, note to self, like I might have to make a trip to Milwaukee because that is like, I have like a love-hate relationship with that, which is for another time. But yes, that is.
We have a couple more podcasts that we could do then. We could do a whole love-hate relationship. I used to work for Chuck E. Cheese. That was my first job.
Wow.
And if you want to hear insane
stories.
Yep. Well, and Showbiz owned them at the time. So like I made pizza and we got cheese that said Showbiz Entertainment cheese on it. And like that whole story is fascinating. And again, I know a lot of it. And oh my God. The stories that I have from working there are unbelievable.
Well, note to self, because I did a long time ago, I did an episode about a 2-episode series about extinct and disappearing restaurant chains, and Showbiz Pizza was one of them because I grew up going there. And so, yes, that's a very near and dear subject to my heart. So let's keep that on the back burner for some time because that's very fascinating.
If you want to look up Midwest Gaming Classic Rocket Fire Explosion, we had them film a commercial for us a number of years ago.
Oh my God. Wow.
So you'll see it. It's actually Billy Bob talking about wanting to come to the Midwest Gaming Classic with Looney Bird.
Oh my God. Wow. This is, and I did a lot. I mean, I'm surprised I didn't come across that. And so yes, that is on my to-do list. Like my children can get their own dinner ready because I need to look that up. That sounds amazing. Oh man, so that's gotta get focused now. All right.
Sorry, didn't mean to derail.
No, that's that is like the best. That is a wonderful derailment. So 2 more questions as we wrap up here. What do you hope that attendees, vendors, etc., walk away with after attending the Midwest Gaming Classic?
Honestly, friendship. Like not necessarily with someone new, but hopefully. But like the feeling of coming in and being part of something that's bigger than you and being part of something positive. Like I said before, there's so much negativity in the world because we've got companies and groups that have figured out that, hey, if we divide people, we can get them to shout about it. And then they'll be real engaged because they'll feel like they're defeating the other side. Right. And again, it's like a game, but it's not the type of game that we want to be playing. And so when you come to the show, you can be standing next to someone who is completely different than you. and you can play a game with them, and you can not have to worry about that. Or it can open up conversations. I play Magic the Gathering on a regular basis. We have Magic at the show, and some of my play group that we actually fell out of touch a few years ago, but we had played for like 5 or 6 years, and we've just randomly had met each other playing at a night game in a local game store, and then we would end up going to each other's houses for many years. And it's just everybody got too busy. But
Sure.
we were so different politically. And we could have those conversations in a very respectful way because we had something that we respected, that we played together. And so if their opinion and my opinion on something were completely different, it wasn't an instant like, let me tell this person what meme this is and like why they are so wrong. It was instead well, wait, why do you think that? And what you always find is that we both really kind of want the same thing. Everybody wants safety. Everybody wants security. Everyone wants to feel like they're doing okay for themselves and their family.
Sure.
And sometimes you just go at that from different perspectives. And at our show, you can kind of remember that everybody in the Great Muppet Caper, there's a guy who says, "Peoples are peoples," and that's kind of my goal. Is that everybody at the show should just remember that peoples are peoples.
I own that movie, and it is a classic movie. So the fact that
Gonzo is sitting very close to my phone right now. So for anybody,
that's a good sign. Oh man, he's my favorite. I had Camilla.
There's always a Muppet around. So
yes,
or there should be.
Yeah, man. Muppets, Rock-afire Explosion. Man, what else do we have in common? Well,
Ghostbusters.
I collected Ghostbusters. I had the vehicle. It was pretty spectacular.
I can see it right over there.
Yeah, I'm looking at my California Raisins figurine right now.
I had some of those too.
Yeah, saw them on ice. That was
that
really ridiculous.
Wait.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Ice. This is true. I have photographic proof. I don't know. So the huge human-sized raisins on ice skates with a humongous costume on that isn't very mobile.
I now have my Google assignment for the night because that is fascinating.
It'll probably be hard to find because it's so old. That anybody's footage is going to be probably very difficult to even see. But yes, I went on a tangent about that a number of episodes ago. But anyways, one thing I failed to bring up at the top of the show is where can people find out more specific information about the Midwestern Gaming Classic? What are the dates for it? What are the times? How can people find you and all that good stuff?
Yeah, best way to do it is to go to our website, which is midwestgamingclassic.com. And you can click on the attend button or the tickets button to see the times. Each day is different. Friday is our preview night. We do not open up the vendor hall that night. And while most things are set up and playable, there are still some people that are setting up. And we kind of tell people like, hey, we super limit tickets to Friday night. They are limited usually to about 1/10 of what we have on Saturday or Sunday. Actually, it was less than that last year. It was about 1/20 that we limited them to. And we do that so that you can actually get to talk to the people that are behind the displays easier. On the following day, it's more of just experiencing the games and seeing what's there. And it's harder to necessarily know like, oh, wait, you're the person setting it up. So that's what our preview night's really about. That runs 6 till midnight. There's a show kickoff from 5 until 6. On Saturday, show runs from 10 until 8. You can get in early if you pre-purchase your tickets. You can get in even earlier if you pre-purchase your very important gamer pass, which we only have a limited number of, and they may be sold out. It's interesting. We are at like a really low number of them. And last year we got to that number and sold them all in one day. And this time I said, hey, we're at this number and we sold one yesterday. So I don't know exactly what that means. And, you know, it could be that tomorrow they're gone, or it could be 5 more days or whatever. But then Sunday we're open 10 to 5. Also, kids 9 and under are free. And so bring the family, and we want to make sure that the next generation gets the experiences to experience some of this. And also the thing that's fun is that we've had, for instance, grandchildren with grandparents where the grandparent will be like, oh my God, look at this pinball machine. This is what I used to play. And then they'll be like, now take me to the museum and show me what you play. And they'll go to, we have some of the voices from the AFMAO series on YouTube that come and they play games with people that come there. And so the kids will go like, oh, look at, this is one of the series that I watch on YouTube and the characters. And oh my God, I can play Minecraft with them. Let me show you, Grandpa or Grandma, how I do this. And like, that's one of the truly unique things about that. We also have an after party on Saturday night, which always is, we call it, it's rated M for mature, because we don't put the same family friendly restrictions into place that we do on other things. Not saying that it's off the wall or crazy, but that lasts from 9 until 1:30 a.m. and has different music and like wacky games that you can play. And oftentimes games with different celebrities and stuff like that. So like, for instance, in the past we've had, and this one we're going to have this year, we have a guy who programmed games for the Atari 2600, Dan Kitchen. And one of the games that he programmed was Crackpots. And so, he was one of the early Activision guys. And so we had him playing Crackpots against people last year. But because if you're playing Crackpots against the designer, you know that the designer's going to win. So we gave him a foot controller, and you get a foot controller and you play it with your feet. And so genius. We do these like weird challenges like this. There's pinball challenges where, like, for instance, you can play with only one hand, or you can play but you face away from the machine or whatever. So there's different challenges that we do like that. There's a whole bunch of fun stuff. It's become a lot of people's favorite event at the show because it's less people and more kind of individual, if you will.
Yeah. Wow. Well, what a great setup. And that's this year. Is it the 23rd through the 25th? Is that?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. It is the 24th through the 26th.
Okay.
And it's at the Baird Center in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. That's the big convention center downtown. A lot of people will know it as the Wisconsin Center because it was that for many, many years.
Sure. Okay. Well, Dan, thank you so much for your time and telling us all about the Midwest Gaming Classic and just how much of a positive impact that's had on, your life and the attendees' lives. It sounds like a really amazing event. So thank you so much for your time.
Awesome. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Dan Lucen as much as I did. What I initially thought would be a light chat about retro video games turned out to be much more in-depth, philosophical, and meaningful than I had expected. It was evident during our discussion that Dan has a deep appreciation for the relationships that developed through his passion for gaming and, ultimately, play. He exemplifies the importance of staying true to who you are and not abandoning the things you loved doing as a kid. And chances are, you might find a community of people who share those same values, and that connection is truly priceless. I will include links to the Midwest Gaming Classic in the show notes. This event takes place next week, which is April 24th to the 26th of 2026, in the very much underrated city of Milwaukee. It covers over 300,000 square feet and attracts tens of thousands of visitors. This year marks the event's 25th anniversary, which is incredible, and I imagine it will just continue to grow. If you want to learn more about this podcast, check out merch, visit my blog, send me a message, and so much more, visit popcultureretrospective.com. Also, don't forget to check out the Q106.5 app, available for both iPhone and Android users. You can listen to 80s and 90s music all day long, as well as check out some other fellow retro-inspired podcasts. Here's a bit more info on the super cool app that yours truly is a part of.
Discover the legendary Q106.5 in your car, on your smart speaker, on your phone. Browse to Q1065.com. 80s, 90s. This is a radio station with a vibe. Download our app or listen online. Search at Q1065 Radio on social media. The Q is your favorite radio station. Discover Q106.5 and hear the 80s and 90s hits on the radio station with personality. Q106.5.
I hope you'll join me on the next episode of the Pop Culture Retrospective podcast, where we will take yet another look at a fascinating facet of the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s in memory of my sister. Until then, be kind, be safe, and hold on to your memories.
Thank you for tuning in to my mama's podcast and the memories of Auntie Rebecca.